we have an hour today together, and to make the best use of your time, BSA did take some time to survey staff about the issues that are most important to them. And they came up with questions in 3 main topics: salary and financial strategy, workforce and organizational change, and building morale and community. We're going to be having 3 staff members from across campus come up on stage and ask the Chancellor your questions, and then we're going to follow that with a short Q&A from the audience. So you were given index cards when you came in, and you can get more as well if you just raise your hand. We'll have a BSA member pass those to you. At a certain point in today's discussion, I'll remind you about those questions, and you can start to pass them to the sides to the BSA members who will collect them. So for right now, you can just hold on to those, but they will be collected, and we will reserve time at the end to make sure we get to those questions as well. Okay, now I want to take a moment. It's my great honor to introduce Chancellor Christ. Christ is the 11th Chancellor and the former Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost for the University of California, Berkeley. She previously served as the president at Smith College from 2002 to 2013, and before that was an English professor and administrator on Berkeley campus for over 3 decades. Chris is a longtime advocate for accessible and quality public higher education, a proponent of the value of a broad education of the liberal arts and sciences, and a longtime champion of women's issues and diversity on college campuses. Since her return to Berkeley, she has been quite busy working to foster community and improve the campus climate, strengthen Berkeley's financial position, and address the campus housing shortage and reaffirm our institution's long-standing commitment to free speech. Chancellor Christ, you took the reins at Berkeley this past summer during a somewhat challenging time for our institution, with the campus facing a budget deficit, somewhat of a leadership crisis, and a fractured community. Before we bring in the interviewers, can you briefly talk about why did you want to take on this job?
I sometimes ask myself that question.
The question of the hour, and what you hope to accomplish during your administration.
Well, Berkeley made me who I am. I came here as a very young assistant professor in 1970, and I grew up here. I had my family here. It made me the leader that I am. And so I'm now at a point in my life when I'm giving back. And I felt that because of my knowledge of the campus and because I'm not looking for another job, that I was able to make some of the hard decisions the campus needs someone to make in order to move forward. This is a time that I think is more critical than many in the campus's history. We face a lot of challenges, as I'm sure you all know, and we're at a point of, I think, rather difficult transition between a generously funded public model to one that depends on multiple and diverse sources of revenue, with all the changes in institutional modes of operation that involves. So let me talk a little bit about what my goals are as chancellor. I have 5. The first of them is rebuilding community. Community has been fractured for the last several years. We're in the midst of a lot of change. Change is never easy. I always think of the metaphor, who moved my cheese, and so community often suffers at times where there is a lot of change. And so one of my goals is trying to create the community in which we're solving Berkeley's problems together collectively. A second goal that I have is improving the student experience at Berkeley. Too often, Berkeley is seen as a place that students survive rather than a place where students thrive. So I have a number of goals, which I can talk about later if you're interested, in regard to undergraduate education. I also think a critical piece of the student experience for both graduate students and undergraduate students is housing. I want to double the capacity of our housing system in the next 10 years. And so I'm moving aggressively to do that, developing a plan to add housing through a number of strategies, long-term leases, but also building on the properties that we have that are available for development. My third goal is diversity. We are just much less diverse than we should be in our undergraduate student body, our graduate student body, our faculty and our staff. I think each of these categories of our population needs a different strategy, that you really have to be very deliberate and focused in how you increase diversity on the undergraduate level. What do you do for graduate students? What do you do for faculty, and most relevant to you, what do you do for staff? My fourth goal is doing what the faculty, what drives this campus, which is to really try to make the right choices to enable what is research that changes our future. Berkeley is a comprehensive campus. It's always held itself the goal of comprehensive excellence. And that means that we can take on really hard and complex problems that demand multiple disciplines for their solution. So trying to figure out what those should be. Some examples: income inequality, climate change, how the mind and the brain work. So that's my fourth goal. And then my final goal, which I assume we'll talk more about, is imagining a new financial model for the campus that puts us on a sustainable financial footing for the decades ahead.
Well, that's a perfect lead-in to our first category of questions, actually, with imagining a new financial future. And before I introduce our first interviewer, the moderator is always remiss in introducing themselves. So in case I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you all out there, my name is Rebecca Anderson, and I am a staff member on campus. I'm the Director of Career Services in South Hall with the School of Information. And now, on to the interviewers. Please join me in welcoming Megan DeRaspini, who's going to be talking about salary and financial strategy. Megan is an academic advisor with the Fall Program for Freshmen. She's been on campus for 8 years and is currently the co-chair for the BSA Career Development Committee, which is actually kicking off their 11th? 10th season right now. So, thank you.
Oh, thanks. Okay, great. So yes, your fifth goal was a great lead-in to the first set of questions related to budget and finances. So given what you've shared, what does your overall financial plan look like? What are some of the short-term and the long-term priorities? And then thinking sort of as 2020 as a sort of milestone year, what kind of milestones would you hope to accomplish by that point?
Well, let me first say that we're making really excellent progress in balancing the budget. We ended June 2016 with an operating deficit of $150 million. We closed this past fiscal year, June 2017, with a deficit of $77 million. So we're almost halfway there.
That's great.
I've said over and over again, and I'll repeat here because it's so important, the key to solving our financial problems is growth of revenues. Every dollar that we raise in increased revenues, we don't have to cut. So there are 6 categories of that we're focusing on for increasing revenues, and let me identify them for you. The first is increased non-degree enrollment, by which I mean enrollment in summer session and university extension. Fall freshman program is a great example of that. Second goal is self-supporting master's programs. There is a really burgeoning market for professional masters, and we have the policy freedom to create self-supporting master's programs. That's another good source of revenue. Third is monetizing real estate. Think about commercial businesses on the bottom floor of, say, for example, the Berkeley Way building that's just about to open up, or the housing that we'll build. Fourth is, and this is the most interesting to me, the most complex, and I think potentially the most productive, is capitalizing more on our intellectual property. We create huge amounts of intellectual property on this campus, more than Stanford. But we really haven't been as focused as Stanford has been on how you monetize it. And so we have a number of people thinking about this hard. What are new ways in which we can leverage our investments in research to create income streams for the campus? Fifth is, of course, increasing contract and grant activity. And sixth is philanthropy. That's an extraordinarily important category. Berkeley is a kind of Johnny-come-lately to the world of philanthropy, not in terms of gifts to the campus. There have been lots of gifts to the campus since its very early years, but in having organized for the campus comprehensive campaigns. The first of these was in the late 1980s. Harvard and Yale have been at this for centuries. We are about to launch, probably in 2019, a new campaign. You don't launch a campaign until you've gotten at least half of the revenues for it, so we're really working hard now, raising money. I'm meeting with lots of people with what they call capacity to give. And what there'll be changes in our development program. We will be more centralized. We will be raising money to support the core of Berkeley. That means faculty positions. It means graduate student fellowships. It means the kinds of things that had been generously funded by the state but are now less generously funded by the state. And so that's a real reorientation in our philanthropy. I have set a goal for myself this year of raising $15 million in Chancellor's discretionary funds. We're over halfway there, so I'm really thrilled by that. And so we're really looking in a very focused way on philanthropy. The goal this year is to figure out which piece of our financial model each of these revenue sources can be. In other words, we're trying to quantify how much we can get from each of these revenue sources in terms of percent of our budget. We're moving this year to a 3-year budget cycle. I know a lot of you are frustrated by the fact that our budgeting has been year to year and you never know what to expect year to year. I know that makes it very hard to plan, and so we're trying to move to a longer revenue cycle, budgeting cycle than we have in the past, one that's more predictable for you.
Okay, great, thank you. And then thinking through the budget and how it sort of trickles down to staff on the ground and thinking through compensation, there were a number of questions related to pay equity. So some of the concerns included cost of living inequity between faculty and staff, longer tenured staff playing catch up with newer staff in compensation, challenges in the merit-based raise system, and a rise in minimum wage approaching compensation of those on campus who may be doing much more than entry-level work. So those are just some of the pieces. Have you given some thought to any of those concerns related to improving pay inequality on campus as it's perceived by staff?
I certainly have. I know that's of course a concern. Ideally, we'd like to pay market rates for every staff role. We're also under, as I probably don't have to tell you, enormous amounts of scrutiny in regard to compensation and compensation increases, and actually a lot of controls on compensation increases from the Office of the President. That being said, on average, staff are paid 91% of the market midpoint for their role. So that's good news, but it's not unchallenging news in that what market midpoint means is that you're plus or minus 5%. So we have a gap of between 4 and 9% in a lot of staff roles, and obviously we have a salary pool of only 3%. What we're doing to help solve this problem is to make available the comparative compensation data to all departments this spring. So as you plan for the budget cycle, you can take whatever pay inequities exist in your particular department in mind as you're doing your budget planning. Regarding pay equity for faculty and staff, there is a different market for every position. Actually, we face different markets in different areas of the faculty, not as much market competition for some fields as there is for some other fields. But I will say that all of the deans and all the senior administrators above M4 voluntarily didn't take their compensation increases this year in order to provide more money for compensation.
Thank you.
Fabulous.
I think that's
Thank
my
you,
time.
Megan.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks. And now join me to welcome David Kim, who's going to be asking some questions around staff workforce and organizational change. David is the Director of Administration with the Department of Anthropology and has been working at UC Berkeley campus for over 20 years. David has also worked for the College of Engineering in administration and research capacity and managed the Department of Theater, Dance, and Performance Studies. David received the Excellence in Management Award twice from BSA, and he currently volunteers with BSA Mentorship Program as a mentor. Thank you, David.
Thank you so much for your time, Chancellor. Staffs are experiencing a worrying loss of knowledge due to sweeping layoffs, such as within the CSS IT right now. How would you address this loss of knowledge and the stress it puts on staff and faculty, and what will be the future of CSS?
Let me start with the future of CSS. We are involved, as I think many of you know, in a real reorganization of CSS. We are moving from the very centralized model to a regional model. ERSO has been the model, which I know you know well
Yes.
from having worked in engineering. ERSO, or Engineering Research Services Organization, I think is what the acronym is.
Gold medal.
Has been our model for this. We are currently rolling out, really as we speak, one in math and physical sciences. We're dividing the campus into 6 regions. I think it's 6, isn't it? And we will be moving toward this regional model. I think that will be I think it will be a better fit for the campus. I hope it will create better both staff and faculty satisfaction with administrative services when you create an interface that's much closer to departments and colleges and large administrative units. So that's that. Knowledge loss is always a challenge, and I have a sense that knowledge loss has been not only a result of staff turnover, but also part of the reorganization as people have changed their position in relationship to the organization. So we're working hard to find other ways to supplement our knowledge retention on campuses, having staff document what they're doing, creating more cross-training programs so staff can acquire more versatile knowledge. We've moved from a quite decentralized administrative organization in which a lot of staff positions by necessity would do lots of things and so have lots of cross-training just in the nature of what they did, to one that is much more specialized in its organization. And I think one of the unforeseen consequences of that reorganization is a kind of loss of the kind of jack-of-all-trades knowledge that people often depend upon. Right. And you have to go to the specialist, and the specialist is somebody that you've never met. And so I think the regionalization is going to help somewhat. I think our trying to document knowledge in ways other than word of mouth and the experience of the person doing it is going to help, but I also think we need more training programs, cross-training programs, so that people can have, even if it's not their job, they can have knowledge of how certain procedures work in the university.
I see. Relates to that question. Because of the past few years of budget cut, staff are expected to stretch themselves with limited resources. When does the do more with less model expire, and might the administration consider maybe doing less with less kind of model? Then, if so, how would the workload be reduced and maintain the excellence?
Yeah. Well, I believe very much in doing less with less. I don't think that you can continually stress people with doing more with less. And one of the observations, I often think of myself as a kind of Rip Van Winkle character, that I, was in Berkeley in the 90s, and then I went away for 11 years, and then I came back. And one of the things that I've observed on coming back is how much more bureaucratic Berkeley is than it was in the 90s. And I think, in part this is due to more regulation. In part it's due to more regulation from the Office of the President, which has really been interesting to me. But I think we all have to challenge ourselves to think about which procedures can we do away with? Which things do we not have to do? We're enormously risk averse at Berkeley. And we give, I don't know, $10 or $11 lunch reimbursement the same scrutiny we give a $10,000 equipment purchase. This doesn't make sense to me. And so we really have to figure out how we can do more sampling in our review rather than comprehensive review of every single transaction. How we can have just much more, I think, delegation of authority for kind of low-risk transactions and simplified procedures. But I'm very much in favor of trying to simplify our modes of operation so that we take some of the bureaucratic burden off of departments and off of staff that I've observed is very much how we do business now.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
Be great for me too. I can't tell you how many forms I sign every day.
Here's my last question. From our recent engagement survey that indicated high dissatisfaction amongst staff with change management. Many of us have a potentially variable ideas, good ideas to improve the administrative and efficiency process that we have right now. But we don't feel like our words were being heard, or our feedback has been heard and make those changes. How can you surface these ideas and share input on decision making and receive the necessary support from the leadership?
That's a really good, it's a profound question. First of all, I'm not sure that, as I said in my opening remarks, I think periods of change, and this is a period of intense change, are just hard. Change is hard on people. We're people that don't like to change. And, but I think there's several things. First of all, I think our internal communication has been really poor. And one of the things that one of my goals is to improve internal communication. I've asked Diana Harvey, who's our new Associate Vice Chancellor for Public Affairs and Communication, to make this a priority. So I think in part it's communication, by which I don't mean more Cal messages, but rather mean more things like this. So we're starting a program next semester in which we're going to have once a month. I don't know how many of you were around when Dan Bogan was the Vice Chancellor for Administration. I don't see any, nods, so maybe not too many. Oh, good. But he used to have something called Bag It with Bogan, which was a kind of paper bag, bring your own lunch. And administrators were there just to answer questions. We're going to do that once a month with leadership on the campus, so you have a chance to just, ask your questions and hear from the administrators who are trying to lead the campus. So I think, the communication can't be in just one form, and Cal messages, though I hope we will do good Cal messages, that can't be the only form of communication. There have to be multiple forms of communication. In terms of communication up, first of all, I always believe in taking it to the top. So if any of you have ideas, just email me, and I'll make sure they get to the right desk, and I'll follow up on them. People who have concerns about athletics don't seem to have any trouble emailing me. So I would hope that those of you who have concerns about our work processes also email me, because frankly, I have a lot more control over our work processes than I do over our football or basketball team.
Even better if they email ideas.
You can also email me that football and basketball, but that's only if you want to.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. And before I introduce our last interviewer, let me remind you that if you have questions, you can write them on note cards. If you need more note cards, just kind of raise your hand, and we'll have some BSA members that will start to be on the sides to collect those if you want to pass them as well. So you just kind of like raise your hand if you want to pass or get a new note card. Our last area is one that I can tell that the Chancellor is very passionate about, not just from her opening remarks, but from her actions as well, building morale and community. So Larisha Alcon is going to be talking about building morale, and she's an instructional services administrator in the faculty support unit at Haas School of Business. Larisha's been on campus for 3 years and is currently serving a 3rd term as well, so she got involved early as the treasurer of the Black Staff and Faculty Organization, BSFO. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Chancellor Christ, it's my pleasure to be sitting with you again today. So our first question, and I just want to say thank you. When you listed your goals, the first thing you listed was building morale and community. I know it wasn't not in order of priority, but the fact that you listed that first was awesome. So we're currently facing unprecedented budget constraints, staff layoffs, and resulting workload stress. In addition to finding direct solutions to these issues, how else do you intend to build staff morale, excuse me?
Yeah, that's such an important question, and to me, it's the hardest of my 5 goals to achieve. I had a dinner last night at University House where we had a man named Mike Summers, who has created this extraordinary, he hasn't created, but he's been part of this extraordinary program at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, called the Meyerhoff Scholars Program, which has been enormously successful in increasing diversity of undergraduate students in STEM fields. And he kept using the term we. And I kept being so moved by this because the we is hard to find at Berkeley. And there are some ways in which we create we. Sports is one way, I guess, but I had a really kind of moving conversation with a faculty member who was noticing the Staff Appreciation Day and saying, I wish we had a day like that. And it was so interesting to me that there's this, I think, yearning for community, and I'm really looking for the kinds of events that enable people to feel that we're a huge community. We are 40,000 students, 10,000 staff, 1,500 faculty. That's really, really big. It's a city. And in cities, you tend to feel community more by your sense of connection to identity and mission rather than things that involve the whole city. So if you think of New York, it's that Big Apple, right? It's I love New York. But then you find your community in your neighborhood. And so I think we all need to get good at creating community in our neighborhoods, but also finding that communal we. So one of the goals I have or one of the ways in which I want to reach my goals is by a strategic planning process. And we're beginning that right now, and the first step is going to be to define the mission. One of the things that so impresses me about the Haas School where you work is their sense of the Haas principles. Question everything, confidence without attitude, students always and beyond yourself. And that's just what everybody feels, and I think we need that sense of mission for the campus expressed in that way, that's one of the ways in which you build community. But there are other things, ways to build morale. One of the things I expected to talk about earlier, didn't have the opportunity, is career ladders. I think we're not as good as we should be of creating career ladders within the campus so that staff can develop their careers over decades here and move from job to job, sometimes from area to area of expertise, but sometimes through having bigger and more responsible jobs. I get a lot of resistance to this from faculty who, when they have a really good staff member in their department, just want to keep them and don't want anybody else to find out about them. I want to change that culture because I think it's so important for you to move around, like anthropology, theater, engineering. I mean, really 3 different places. And so it's, I think that's really important. And I think that if people feel an individual sense of hope about their career advancement, it's easier to feel hope in general about the institution. We have done a few things. We've hired an employee experience lead, James Dudek, whose sole job it is to work on staff morale. We have introduced a fall staff appreciation week. There's also the week that we always have in spring, and then there's a summer fest, the existing week in summer. We're trying to be very transparent with our employee engagement results so that you can see what you collectively think. And we've begun investing in the wonderful staff organizations that we have, which I hope will be my partners, our partners in improving staff morale. We also are going to invest in more robust onboarding of staff. We don't do enough, I think, for staff orientation. I met with the head of research, administrative heads, staff heads of research units. This was a number of months ago, and I was struck by how wide the range was of the amount of orientation that was given to them. Some felt they were just thrown in the deep end of the pool without any orientation whatsoever, and some were given quite effective orientation. So I think we need to standardize and really increase our investment in staff orientation. And we're investing in additional organization development consultants to help our organization manage change, because we have a lot of change management to do and we have to get better at it.
Yes. Awesome, thank you. Our next question is, the recent highly visible issues that the university has experienced with the Ben Shapiro talk and the Free Speech Week often seem to result in a reactive response by the university. What steps does the university plan to take to initiate a more proactive response to significant public issues rather than a reactionary response?
That's very much on the top of my mind, and there's several things that we're doing. First of all, we have we're going to have a series of talks in the spring. I'm calling them Point Counterpoint, that are bringing together people with sharply divergent views to have a civil conversation with each other so we can begin to model for our community, for our students, disagreement across difference. We're also inviting a number of people to our campus in the spring that I think people will be excited to hear from, that represent other points of view than the ones we hosted in the fall, who were not quite so popular. And the other thing that I'm doing is there's a commission on free speech. It's equal representation, faculty, staff, students, to try to come up with a better set of policies that will result in, I think, events that are more in keeping with the campus's mission and the campus's desires.
Awesome, that sounds great. Our last question is, campus decisions impact staff, faculty, and students, yet each group is organized in a way that continue to draw lines between them. How might we bridge these gaps in the context of community building?
That's a really, really good question, and several ideas. One is that I think that community is best created on the department or the school level. It's a little bit hard and abstract to do it at the whole campus level, but in the Haas School or the anthropology department or the theater department, making sure that every department thinks about how do we build community within our particular neighborhood. on this campus. I also am just intrigued by the wistfulness that this faculty member expressed that they could participate in Staff Appreciation Week, and I wonder whether we shouldn't have some combined events that bring together our different populations. I hope that when we celebrate our sesquicentennial, I think I got it right, that this can be a real community building and community enhancing event.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the questions. And now we have time for your questions. So please continue writing and passing your questions to the side. And I think we have some questions queued up that have already been collected that I'll start to pose for the Chancellor. And if you definitely need a new note card, please just raise your hand and a new note card will come over to you. Thank you so much. So the first question is definitely timely for the moment, and it's around tax impacts on graduate students. Namely, what is the university planning any actions to help address the implications for grad students on the new tax plan? Do you anticipate further administrative staff cuts as a result potentially, or other things that are going to be addressing this?
Well, we already are acting, that we are very energetically engaged in lobbying the Congress. As you probably know, the provision that tuition remission is taxable income is part of the House bill, but not the Senate bill. And so in the reconciliation, it's our goal that that is not in the final bill. And we've been having some success. People are guardedly hopeful that this is not going to become law. The most important thing that we can do is lobby Congress. So if any of you are from the states California is good in this regard, but we have other states to worry about. So pressure on the state legislators that are part of the Reconciliation Committee that this is a really poor idea. I got a suggestion from Jeff Bokor, actually in the College of Engineering in my morning's email, that we should also be targeting industry, that industry should have a real interest in not seeing this provision of the tax bill pass into law. That's the most important thing we can do. No, we're not planning now, because I think it would actually be a mistake politically to be saying we're going to do X, Y, and Z to cope with this provision of the tax bill. All our energy is going into saying this should not be a provision of the tax bill.
Thank you. And I just have to remark...
And no, there won't be, because I'm determinedly optimistic, there will not be layoffs as a consequence of this, because I believe it's not going to be a provision of the final tax bill.
Definitely welcome words here.
It doesn't mean we should be complacent, but I think there's a fighting chance.
And I just want to remark that how amazing it is that the first question here has to do with a focus on students. I think it really speaks to the students first that all staff have really internalized. So thank you all for that. And the next question gets a little more inwardly focused on staff, but it's around staff salaries. Again, there's another question about a plan. If there's a plan to raise unrepresented staff salaries in the next few years, and if there's anything that you or we or somebody can do to encourage UCLP to spend more of its money on staff salaries.
Well, UCLP, like the campuses, is financially in straitened circumstances, and I think we have to do that. My sense is the pools are going to be about 3%. I've seen the long-term budget models for OP. They're modeling both staff and faculty at 3%. And so we have to, within that latitude, make the best judgments that we can about where equity problems exist.
Definitely hard decisions there.
Very hard decisions.
The next question is around relationships and community, which we've talked a lot about. So Berkeley prides itself on being a relationship-oriented workplace. How will the regional model that we've seeing that's going to happen with CSS impact our reliance on relationships to get work done?
I actually think it's going to enhance relationships because I hear the complaint frequently about CSS. I don't know the people anymore, and now the interface for each of these regions is going to be on campus. They're going to be people that you can go to and talk to in their offices, even though some of the back office work will continue being done on 4th Street.
This is another question about regional models. I apologize.
Obviously, the interest
Stay
of the day.
on the topic for a slight bit longer, but it's a slightly different focus, and I think it's one that you've probably fielded before around CSS. You know, we tried CSS, and that was a pilot, and this question's around basically making sure that we don't repeat the same mistakes. Because we pulled the plug on that model of CSS, in some folks' mind, relatively early, how can we ensure that this version, this second regional model, is going to be successful? And we're going to give it the time and resources it needs to really be successful.
That's a really, I think the way of framing the question, that way of framing the question suggests what the answer is, which is, from what I've heard, I wasn't here at this time, CSS was implemented very, very quickly. And probably the campus should have taken a lot more time to implement it and done it more gradually. And we're moving to a regional model gradually. So we have our first, the first cluster, which is math, chemistry, and physical sciences. We're working on now. We will learn from that. I think the second is the biological sciences and CNR. Not sure what the third is. But I think with each, as we roll out each model, we're going to learn from that and be able to do it better. The second time, we also have been working through our processes one by one, trying to figure out how we can streamline them, make them more efficient, make improvements. And that work has been going on actually all year and will help us with the success of implementation.
Great, thank you. Now we can switch gears for a little bit. And this question's around liberal arts background. So the question comes from an advisor who's seen an increased anxiety among students around the job search, which is kind of driving them toward majors that can be perceived as more lucrative. Things like econ, hosp business, CS, or cog sci. I know I could speak to this as a former chemistry major who is now not doing anything with chemistry because my mom said nobody with a history degree will ever get a job. Thanks, Mom. But how might you sell the liberal arts to employers, and how can we help our students sell liberal arts if they're interested in that area? How can we leverage our influence as Berkeley to show the professional world the value of a liberal arts education? Here is right. Thank you.
Well, people graduating from college today, the young men and women that I'm going to graduate next Sunday, week from Sunday, will have not only 5 or 6 different jobs, they'll have 5 or 6 different careers in the course of their working lives. And the best way to prepare for many different careers is to have really good basic skills. And some of those basic skills are ones that the liberal arts teach better than any other area of the curriculum. Today, professionals need to write well. You learn how to write from my own discipline, English, but you learn how to write from discursive fields. Probably the most critical skill is critical thinking. Again, something that's taught in the liberal arts. There's a really interesting essay, now it's quite old, by the very distinguished chemist, Thomas Cech. And he went to a liberal arts college as an undergraduate. And he has noticed over the course of his career how many leaders in science and technology went to liberal arts colleges, and he asks himself, why is this the case? And he says that taking courses over a broad range of disciplines doesn't just create cultivated people like, chemists who love the opera, but that being learning how to shift your perspective and the tools that you use to address a problem makes you not just a more cultivated person, but a better chemist. Mm-hmm. And I think that capacity to change your frame of reference, to be a very good reader of language, to be a good writer of language, to be a critical thinker, these are critical job skills in the 21st century. And the business leaders that I've spoken with talk about visual literacy, talk about language literacy as the most important skills that they look for when they hire. So I think the liberal arts are going to be more critical in the decades ahead, not less critical. I realize this is an uphill battle with some students. It also means, I believe, that every student should realize, if they don't already, and probably most of them do, that being able to work with data, being able to work with computers, it's just a job skill that you need, and you can be an English major and learn those things too.
Yeah, I mean, I think you spoke directly to the problem, and coming from a school with a data science degree, you cannot be a good data scientist without also being a good communicator, a good person who can study people and frame a research question. So it speaks directly to liberal arts background that you were just mentioning.
Yeah, I remember this was an experience I had years ago when I was talking with an accreditation team for the College of Engineering. This was back when I was the Dean of Letters and Science. And he was saying the most important skill that he looks for in engineers is the ability to present his or her ideas to a group. He says every week an engineer is going to be in the situation of having to persuade a group of people about the value of their solution to an engineering problem. So I think we often overestimate the importance of technical skills and underestimate the importance of the so-called softer skills, or just that kind of language skills, visual literacy skills that are critical in just about every line of work.
Now, you sold me on this.
Good.
Hopefully we can take some notes for advisors out there as well. Another question around student needs. So this question is about supporting units and departments who have been impacted by increases in student needs around mental health and disabled student services, and if you see any additional support that they could find or might be coming.
Yeah, one of my priorities is to better address disability issues. I think that we haven't done as good a job as we can and should in that area. We have increasing numbers of students that do have disabilities, and increasing numbers of students who struggle with mental health issues. I think we have to address those both by making sure that we're adequately staffed with counselors in the Tang Center, but also by doing much more talking than we currently do about the value of resilience and teaching students how to handle stress. I mean, you all know, because you're all adults, that nobody leads a stress-free life, that life brings stress. And it's so important to know how to handle that. I often felt at Smith and feel that, at Berkeley as well, that the students feel like they're competing in the stress Olympics, and that if they can, somehow there's some sort of virtue in being highly stressed. And I think that that's really a wrong, without in any way minimizing anybody's stress. I think it's so important to develop values of stress management and resilience in your life.
Yeah, it's life skills, both communication and resilience.
Yes.
Really important to send our students out in the world with.
Yes.
The next question is actually one from before that we didn't get a chance to get to. So I think you've already seen this one, but it's around our budget challenges and how they've affected our ability to retain staff. And what we can do to retain staff, especially when it's common knowledge that there are higher paying jobs for similar positions in the private sector.
Yeah, we study our retention statistics and profile very, very carefully. So far as we can see, salary is usually not the main motivation for someone to take another job. A sense of greater horizons and possibilities often is. And so I think the best thing that we can do is what I mentioned a little bit earlier, to work with career ladders so people feel that there are paths to upward mobility within this organization, and to make sure that our staff feel valued.
And we used to mention we, and I'm kind of struck by this we as well.
Yeah.
And so for staff out there, there's a great quote from Maya Angelou: nothing will work unless we do, unless you do. So I would encourage all of you to take advantage of BSA, the mentorship program, other staff communities, so that we're not just waiting for the career ladders, but also taking action ourselves.
Yeah. There's a wonderful internship program in the undergraduate, or not, student affairs. Student affairs, that perhaps could be a model. There's a wonderful program in the Haas School that's a kind of informal, have coffee for 15 minutes with someone. So that's another opportunity.
I think we might have time for one more of these questions around communication. There's been a couple announcements that went out recently. One on how we have reduced the deficit more than targeted in fiscal year 2016-2017, which was really welcome news. This person was remarking that the news was great, but they were dismayed to find out about the news from the Daily Cal and not from another message source. So, if you have more comments about how we can take advantage of these opportunities to share the good news and use them as community building.
Yeah, that's a question I really like to turn back, because I often feel, like a frustrated parent, but I told you that already. And I guess I'm going to answer my own question, that we have to have multiple modes of communication, and it's really striking to me how many people rely on the Daily Cal, which is not my most accurate source of news. But I take that as, we should be sending more out there.
For those of us who work in student services, I'm sure this is what you said about being a frustrated parent resonates, because I'm sure all of you that works with students know many times that you're like, I've told you that already. More methods.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up the Q&A, I just want to leave a couple minutes to see if you'd like to offer any closing remarks, any thoughts on some of the conversation we've had today together.
Well, I first want to thank you. Berkeley has such a fabulous staff. I see so many familiar faces out there, and we couldn't do what we do. We couldn't serve our students. We couldn't serve our faculty were it not for the extraordinary work you do. And there are so many. You're so smart, you're so imaginative, you're so inventive, and I want to find better ways of harnessing all that extraordinary intelligence and loyalty and imagination that you bring to your work. So first, just a big thank you. These are challenging times, and I feel it myself, and I know that you feel it, but when you think about, what I always do is I think about our students. I just heard a story the other day that some of you may know about the Miller Scholars Program. It's this wonderful program for community college, scholarship program for community college transfer students that's been funded by this wonderful benefactor, George Miller. And there was a celebration celebrating the 10 years of the George Miller program. And a an alumna of the program, told her story, and this is just, I thought, an extraordinary story. So she is from Ohio, and in our high school, sort of counselor's office, she sees a picture of the Campanile, and she asks somebody in the office, "Where is that? And can I go there?" And they've said, "Oh, that's not a place for people like you. Real people don't go there. The local Walmart is hiring. Why don't you apply for a job?" And this young woman somehow gets herself on her own steam to Riverside, California. She finds a community college in the Yellow Pages, and she goes there, and in the community college office, she sees a picture of that Campanile again. And so she applies to Berkeley. She becomes a Miller Scholar, and now she's a practicing civil rights attorney. And it's just, it's those stories, which I know those of you who interface with students all the time, you hear all the time. This is a place that enables young people to achieve their dreams. And that's so exciting to have a piece of that. And then our faculty are doing research that's changing the world. And so I feel so privileged to be a part of this. And that's certainly in the discouraging moments when I'm answering emails from football and basketball fans. What keeps me really at my work and thinking what a great place this is that we all share. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. That's a very inspiring story to leave on, to remember why we are here. And again, everybody, coming together is really the beginning. Keeping together is progress, and working together is really success. So let's work together to create the we. Thank you again for BSA for hosting today, and thank you for Chancellor Christ for being here with this lovely chat together.
Thank you for your questions.